Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are reviewing Joker.
This is going to be such a difficult film to review because really, any star rating you give this film is valid.
Yeah, it's a very divisive film, so I could see where anyone can make an argument for, again, really any star rating.
It's the most art housey of all superhero comic book films, and an art house is more focused on its message as opposed to mass appeal, right?
Exactly.
And we've defined art in this podcast before as communication through creation. This movie definitely has a message to communicate, and whether or not you appreciated it is subjective. So there's a lot of different viewpoints on this. We'll cover as many as we can as we break down this film later on in the episode.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it. Before we get into our review, we're going to talk about the news items from the past week, of which there were 2 trailers. There's the Birds of Prey trailer, conveniently released for the Joker film.
Yeah, we figured that would happen.
And then there's the Runaways Season 3 trailer, which no one cares about, but we're going to talk about. As always, our segment times are in our episode description, so feel free to jump around to whatever point in the show you want to listen to.
Thanks to everyone who rated us on Apple Podcasts. We have 157 ratings on that platform now. And special thank you to Sir Haha, Gambit Rogue Forever, Jemmer34, and SREX96 for leaving us reviews on iTunes. As you guys know, we're trying to get to 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts and iTunes, and that way our reviews of these Marvel and DC films become eligible to be counted toward Rotten Tomatoes' official tomato meter.
We are really close, guys. We are really close. Let's keep up this momentum. You guys have been awesome. Let's keep going.
And a special shout out to Bodo Winter, who recently became an executive producer of this show through our Patreon account. That's one of our tiers. It's his birthday today, as of this recording on October 6th. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Bodo.
And with that all out of the way,
quick to the No Prize.
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our Question of the Week segment.
Last week's question was, who do you want to be the primary villain of the Far From Home sequel, and why?
We didn't get a huge variety of answers for this one, but they were all great answers. So the first honorable mention goes to Harrison Fox, who gave the answer of Kraven and Scorpion, because both of them can hunt Spider-Man. I really like that duo, actually. Scorpion is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains, and of course we've talked about Kraven being like the perfect villain thematically for this upcoming Spider-Man film. Now that Peter Parker's secret identity is exposed, Kraven has a target.
I almost feel like Kraven could hunt Scorpion as well.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Joel Seagrave gave the answer of Kingpin and Ultimate Kraven, wanting a return of Vincent D'Onofrio from the Daredevil Netflix show in the role.
That would be fantastic. I loved Vincent D'Onofrio's take on the character. And Ultimate Kraven was pretty funny. He was like Crocodile Dundee. He had his own reality show where he would hunt big game.
Really?
Yeah, and then he got his ass kicked by Spider-Man and then, gave himself animal powers, basically. Like, he was almost like a werewolf. So it's an interesting take on the character that I think would be well adapted to a film. The problem with having the Kingpin as a villain, though, is that technically, per the Disney and Netflix deal, Disney can't use any of the characters from the Netflix shows for a good 5 years within the cinematic universe, which means that Kingpin and Daredevil and Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and Punisher can't be in a Marvel movie until at least 2023, and this Spider-Man movie comes out in 2021.
Ugh, that's horrible.
That sucks. Honorable mention goes to Jamie Wojcik, who gave the answer of Chameleon and Kraven. That's a fantastic answer, because Chameleon and Kraven have teamed up in the comics before, and again, just dealing with the whole identity issue, Chameleon would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Great answer.
John Spees gave the answer of Kraven, saying, of course.
Red Hood gave the answer Kraven the Hunter, again, because Peter Parker's identity is out.
Brooks Lambton gave the answer of Kraven the Hunter because we've never seen him before on screen.
Yeah, so many different good reasons to go with Kraven. Yeah. Which is also the answer that Jacob Bell gave, and he said that Kraven should be played by Joe Manganiello. I agree that Joe Manganiello would be a fantastic actor for the role because, he really looks the part. However, Joe Manganiello played Flash Thompson in Raimi's original Spider-Man trilogy. So you would have Flash Thompson becoming Kraven the Hunter, in a sense. Which would feel a little weird, but...
No, it's fine. Yeah. It's not in the same universe. Plus, you already had J.K. Simmons playing both universes, so why not Joe Manganiello?
That's true.
Jace Crump gave the answer of You guessed it, Kraven the Hunter, who said that he would hunt Peter now that his secret identity is out. And Aaron Alexander Jones said he's also jumping on the Kraven bandwagon with an assist from the Chameleon.
Jeff Miles Jr. gave a different answer. He wants to see Black Cat and the Kingpin because he wants to see that love triangle. Now that Peter Parker and MJ are kind of a couple now, he wants to introduce that love triangle with the Black Cat.
Introduce some conflict.
Yeah,
Nice. Chris Castaneda gave the answer of Scorpion and J. Jonah Jameson. They would team up like they have in the comics.
That's a great duo right there.
Honorable mention also goes to Shannon Sanderson, who said he would like to see Tombstone in the next Spider-Man film played by Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, I like that answer. Sanafar Umad said that Kingpin or Bullseye should be the villain because then you could have a Daredevil team up and introduce the Defenders characters into the MCU.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, by 2023, this could be possible.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. But the winners of this week's No Prize go to Bo Bermudez and Manav Desai, who both gave the answer of Sinister Six. Bo Bermudez said that it could be comprised of all the villains that we've already seen, and Manav Desai said it would be interesting to see how Peter's social and public life plays out as a group of villains get their revenge. And the reason I chose this answer is because I think with the end credit scene from Far From Home, Peter Parker is now at his most vulnerable point, both socially, publicly, in every way. He's extremely vulnerable. And I think given the themes of the Spider-Man comics, how he's always shouldered this great burden and responsibility, I think now is the perfect time to strike for him to just be overwhelmed with a huge group of villains.
But who would they even be?
No.
Do we have 6?
Well, you could have Vulture, you could have Scorpion, you could have Shocker, Mysterio, that's 4. And you could introduce Kraven and another villain, such as Electro or Sandman. I think that would be fantastic. Now, it wouldn't be true to the comic book version of the Sinister Six, but you got to work with what you got. I think it'll still work the same.
So congrats again to Bo Bermudez and Manav Desai for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want to win your own No Prize, stay tuned to the rest of this episode where we'll ask another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news. So if you listened to our podcast 2 episodes ago, we talked about the Birds of Prey movie's first poster. And we basically crapped all over it because it's just a horrible poster.
Yeah.
That didn't give me the highest of expectations going into the first trailer that we received this past Tuesday.
Right.
And I have to say, that's probably a good thing because
I would say so.
I really liked this trailer.
Yeah, it definitely exceeded my expectations. I was expecting something a little bit more, I don't know, stupid. But what really won me over with this first Birds of Prey trailer, I think, was the action. And the wild tone seems totally fitting.
Yeah, it seems gritty. It seems emotional. And the cinematography, I think, is what blew me away.
Yeah, they did a good job there.
The colors and just the framing and the shots are just really beautiful.
It looks unique. It looks like stuff that we haven't seen before. To use a metaphor, I guess I was expecting something like Powerpuff Girls, and what I ended up getting was, I don't know, some badass anime like One Punch Man or something like that.
It does look badass. It looks really badass. I was surprised. Of course, it's also very Harley-centric. That I'm not surprised about because of the poster.
Right.
I think the biggest criticism levied at this trailer, from what I've seen online, is why is it called Birds of Prey? It should be called Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey.
Yeah, right. We mentioned that when we talked about the poster. I think my biggest criticism of this trailer is that the characters still do not look any way, shape, or form like their comic book counterparts. So while it looks like an interesting movie, it doesn't look faithful at all still.
No, absolutely not.
And that's pretty annoying.
And I think that would be an easier pill to swallow if we actually got to see more of the characters in this trailer. If we were actually even introduced to them. None of the other characters have really any lines in this film, except for like minor little snippets off screen.
I think it would also help to see some more comic book elements, like to see Black Canary's canary cry, or Black Mask's mask, or, you know, Cassandra Cain kicking ass or something like that.
Well, we got a hint at the canary cry pretty early on in the trailer when Dinah is like singing at the microphone and you see this martini glass like start to vibrate like it's about to shatter.
Yeah.
We also do get hints of, I don't want to say Black Mask's mask, but we get hints of black masks. Does that make sense? And what concerns me is that they're GIMP masks.
Oh, no.
So there's a scene when Roman Sionis is like very distressed. Behind him is like this painting of someone wearing this black mask and it's threaded and it's kind of gimpy like. But later on, it's even more evident in Harley Quinn's Marilyn Monroe number that she's doing.
Oh, yeah.
The guys around her are wearing like these stringed gimp masks. They don't have like the zipper over their mouth, but it looks very like BDSM.
Interesting. Such a weird translation.
Exactly.
I guess it's a translation that one could make. I don't think it's true to the character of the comics at all, who's more of like a traditional evil gangster. I guess this is just a way to add some flavor. I think one of the biggest moments that stood out for me in this trailer was Huntress's attack on those mobsters while they're eating dinner. And this is before I saw the Joker movie, you know? So when she kicked the table into those guys and just shot them point blank, I was like, that is so damn hardcore. Like, that is exceptionally violent. Like, you don't even give them a chance to stand up and pull out their guns. You're just going to attack them when they're vulnerable eating.
It does look like this movie is going to make great use of its R rating.
So it is going to be rated R.
Yeah, I believe it is. I mean, we see Harley Quinn jump on this guy's like legs and just like break them. And you get this like great Tarantino shot of the guy just like screaming in pain.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
The action overall in this looks like it's really well done. Of course, the action scenes are being directed by Chad Stahelski, you know, who did the John Wick films.
Right.
So we know they're going to be great. There's this scene towards the end of the trailer where Harley Quinn sort of jumps onto the back of a car and then like does this sweet kick to the side of a guy's head. He falls off. I'm pretty sure that stunt guy died because it looks like he went right for that back tire.
And he got kicked in the head with a pair of roller skates.
It looks like it's going to be a really good action scene. There's a lot in this that I really like about Harley Quinn. When she's talking about how, like, I'm the one they should be afraid of. Not you, not Mr. J, me, Harley freaking Quinn. That was just a great line, great delivery, and just great visuals to go along with it.
Well, I think the voice sounded spot on with that line.
Oh, for sure. Throughout this whole trailer, even from the beginning when she's talking about what a Harley Quinn is,
yeah,
I think the voice is better than we've ever heard it coming from her.
Certainly better than her acting in Suicide Squad.
The trailer doesn't give away really anything in regards to story. Like, we don't know what the story of this film is going to be yet.
Yeah, we know that essentially Harley Quinn is teaming up with the rest of them to attack Black Mask. She's protecting Cassandra Cain. She works at the club that the Black Mask runs. And I think
Does she work for it?
I think Harley Quinn is a go-go dancer. That's why she's dancing on the pole. And Dinah is a singer, of course. What did you think of the final gag of the trailer where Cassandra throws the dynamite out of the window?
Like the whole, like, you don't call a woman a chick kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Cassandra Cain. Like, she just killed those people. Like, she just straight up blew them up.
Oh, it's a catch-22. You can't just hold the dynamite. You got to throw it out the window. It's like a great bit of like mayhem, like comedic mayhem that actually got a great reaction in the audience when I saw this trailer in theaters before the Joker movie.
The first time I saw the Joker movie, I didn't see this trailer. The second time I did, yeah, people seem to respond well to it.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging.
As always, we'll see how the movie actually turns out in, I guess, a few months. Comes out in February.
Yeah. I'm really curious, though, to see what our listeners thought of the trailer. That brings us to our question of the week. After seeing the first trailer for Birds of Prey, are you more or less excited for the film?
And why? Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel Note Prize that we'll post to social media. The other trailer that we got a hold of this past week, actually this Runaways Season 3 trailer was released at New York Comic Con, from which very little news was released.
There's a lot of comic news, but not like comic movie news.
Right. I did really enjoy this Season 3 trailer, though. As you guys know, if you've listened to our Runaway Season 2 review, I'm not a huge fan of the show. It's not really my thing. You know, it's a little bit too teenage drama-y for me, and not enough superhero action. But this trailer has me excited because it really seems to be amping up the superhero action compared to previous seasons. Because we have our first real comic book villain outside of the Pride, you know, the group's parents, in the character of Morgan Le Fay. And she's being portrayed by the actress Elizabeth Hurley, who I had no idea was going to be in Season 3. She looks amazing. I haven't seen her since probably like Bedazzled was the last movie I saw.
I was just about to say that, yeah, with Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, she looks great. But she introduces kind of like this magical element to the show. The way Season 2 ended, you know, the aliens that Jonah was a part of, their ship blew up and their essence kind of like scattered into the parents, the Pride parents that were still around. And one of the aliens went into one of the kids. Now, if you guys have read your Runaways comics, it may be easy to guess which one of these characters is going to turn out to be the mole, the traitor.
Yeah.
I don't want to give that away here. I might be wrong.
I think the trailer is trying to set it up as if Nico is like the one that's been tainted.
Yeah, that's the way it's portrayed in this trailer. I don't think that she's being tainted through alien possession, though. I think she's being tainted by Morgan Le Fay. And they're introducing this magical element where we finally see the Staff of One, protrude from Nico's chest as it does in the comics. Yeah, that was pretty damn cool looking. So we're seeing a lot more elements brought in that are more fantastical, more true to the comics, a little bit less grounded. It seems like the budget has gone up basically for this series. And that's super exciting.
For me, really, the only thing I'm excited about is the appearance of Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, wasn't that fantastic? That was like a nice little bookmark at the end of this trailer where we see Cloak and Dagger from the Freeform television show Cloak and Dagger. Those characters are showing up and making an appearance here. And I absolutely love that show. As much of a teenage drama the Cloak and Dagger television series also is, I think it's done a lot more successfully than the Runaways show. And so I'm glad to see that those characters are being brought in because I think it'll make this show better.
Yeah, imagine the Cloak and Dagger show doesn't have to juggle as many characters and side plots and stuff like that.
Right. And well, just the actors are better. Aubrey Joseph and Olivia Holt they're fantastic actors. The amount of emotional heft they bring to Cloak and Dagger is just amazing.
Now, the current rumor is that both of those shows, Runaways and Cloak and Dagger, aren't going to be renewed for new seasons. Because
I heard that rumor.
All Marvel television series outside of animation will be brought under the Marvel Studios banner.
Right, and is going to be airing strictly on the Disney Plus platform as opposed to any other platform.
That's why Ghost Rider was canceled from Hulu.
Yeah, and it's likely that Hellstrom will also be canceled. But I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I like having everything under one studio. That way we know these shows are in the MCU. Unlike the Netflix series where it was a little bit vague, the whole universe could play off of itself a little bit better that way, I think.
Yes! Only one more season of Runaways to review, then I never have to do it again.
That review will be coming out probably sometime in early January from us.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of the Runaways and you haven't seen this trailer yet, definitely check it out on YouTube. There's a lot to be excited about for the upcoming season. But I think that does it for all the news this episode, so let's go ahead and get into the main event where we review the film Joker.
Okay, Joker. Before we get into this, there's a lot to talk about. If you haven't seen the film, you're doing yourself a disservice by spoiling all of this for you because there's a lot of shocks, a lot of surprises in it.
Yeah, and this is a spoiler review, as all of our reviews are.
I'd recommend that if you're on the fence about seeing it and you're not a big Batman fan, you should maybe wait until it's available to stream at home, where you can absorb and study the film without having to be uncomfortable around a bunch of strangers. I made the mistake of overhyping the film to a bunch of coworkers, and we all went to see it as a group. Boy, was that awkward. I didn't quite know what to say about the film afterward. I knew the film wasn't really my cup of tea, but I also recognized that it's the kind of film that takes me a few screenings to fully appreciate, like Clockwork Orange or Taxi Driver or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right.
You know, it admittedly takes me a while to grapple with uncomfortable, disturbing films.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a fun film. It's an angry film. It's a film with an angry message, basically. It does raise valid issues of mental health and society, but the movie has no heroes.
No, you're absolutely right. It doesn't. I need to admit, if you've been a longtime listener of our podcast, you know I really disliked the idea of a Joker origin film when it was first announced. I don't think the Joker needs an origin. I think he's more frightening when he's just this ambiguous manifestation of chaos. I wasn't too excited either that Todd Phillips was directing. His past work of films was like Road Trip, Old School, and the Hangover trilogy. Phillips wrote the Joker as well as directed it, and he did receive an Oscar nomination for Best Screenplay for the film Borat. So at the very least, I thought this film would be funny, but boy, was I wrong. I didn't really come around on the film until we started seeing the first set footage of Joaquin Phoenix. After the trailers with their sweeping, magnificent background music, and after it won the Golden Lion, at the Venice Film Festival and the initial wave of rave reviews, it should come as a surprise to no one that I went into the film with unbelievably high expectations.
Did I tell you to check him? I tell you to check him every single time.
Every time.
You never listen to me.
I was expecting a psychological thriller, and instead I feel like we got a psychological downer.
I think what I wanted was a movie about Heath Ledger's Joker character from The Dark Knight. And this movie was not that. Like, don't go into this movie expecting something like that. I think I would have liked that more because Ledger's Joker was larger than life. You know, and that's why we even read and watch superhero stories, for the portrayal of fantastical characters who aren't real, doing incredible things in a battle of good versus evil, stories that, generally speaking, are fairly black and white in their portrayal of morality.
And especially when it comes to DC stories.
Yes.
Because DC has always been much more fantastical as opposed to Marvel, which has been a little bit more
relatable.
Sci-fi, relatable.
Yeah. This story was not an escape. This Joker was not larger than life. He was very real feeling.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I guess I'm just personally not a huge fan of movies that don't have heroes within this particular genre and aren't larger than life.
I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong, this film is good. Todd Phillips deserves any and all accolades he gets from this film. But it's also a tragedy. You know, it's uncomfortable, it's joyless, It has zero levity or fun, like you mentioned. Whenever we're deciding what rating to give a film, one of the questions we ask ourselves is, did the film transcend the superhero genre? Few comic book films have been able to do that. The Dark Knight did, so did Watchmen and Logan did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say this film transcended the superhero genre because it didn't start there to begin with. It's not a conventional comic book movie, so I wouldn't be surprised if MCU fans hate this film. And not just MCU fans, but like anyone who expected a conventional story. You know, in the standard 3-act hero's journey, you have a broken character who grows into a whole hero by the end. And as you mentioned, there are no heroes in this movie. There's no one to root for. Arthur never becomes whole. He just breaks and breaks until he completely shatters. And it's really hard to watch him grow more violent and unhinged.
Yeah. I mean, you said that this movie wasn't really your cup of tea. I have to ask you, would you ever have seen this film if it wasn't called The Joker?
Probably down the line, because I've seen films like Taxi Driver, I've seen films like Clockwork Orange, these disturbing films, especially if it was getting Oscar buzz, I probably would have seen it.
The tale of like a psychopathic serial killer devolving into madness?
Well, Todd Phillips mentioned that he wanted to make a film like that, a film tackling mental illness, a film that tackled society, but give it added attention by attaching a comic book character's name to it, to give it that appeal.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what this was.
And in that respect, this film may be Joker in name only. Like, this may not be the comic book Joker that we know and love to hate. That being said, I think they also made this film in a way that leaves it open for the introduction of more fantastical elements. I would love to see Joker take on Batman in a sequel. Of course, Joker will be like 40 years older than Batman, which is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But who knows?
You could almost consider this like an Elseworlds. I know when Todd Phillips was pitching this film, he was saying, hey, this could be part of something called like DC Black Label, and we could create this whole sort of mature universe for Black Label. Not necessarily connected films, but films you couldn't tell under like a normal DC brand, something much more mature.
Yeah, which I think is a great idea. I think Marvel should do the same thing.
We'll see if that happens. I mean, the Joker has already broken box office records for October.
Yeah, it beat Venom.
So I'd be really shocked if Warner Brothers didn't want to kind of carry this momentum forward into a franchise. But we'll see, you know. Ultimately, what I think makes this film and this world so successful was the message of the film. You know, the film is uncomfortable not just because of its horrific violence, but because of its message. From the opening scene, when we see Arthur Fleck don his clown makeup, we hear about Gotham City's garbage strike. And it's a great analogy to how negativity, like the trash, builds up over time when people are too stubborn to see the other perspective and compromise.
Yeah.
There's a social divide in Gotham City in a way that feels very real to contemporary America.
Oh, definitely. You know, this film was set in 1981, but it felt very modern with all the shit that's going on nowadays.
Yeah. You know, Arthur's character notices in the film that it feels like society is getting crazier. And no matter your political slant, I think everyone can agree with that notion right now. We've had dozens of mass shootings this year in America. Politicians are name-calling, protesters are rioting, extremism is on the rise because we're refusing to see the other perspective and compromise.
Yeah.
The film aggressively points out the apathy corrupting society, and it's uncomfortable to watch because it points out that, in a way, we're all complicit for the state of society because we're all either full of rage, like the clown rioters, or we're apathetic, like Thomas Wayne or Murray Franklin, which makes us responsible for the chaos in society. And the chaos, according to the Joker at the end of this film, is what we deserve. But if you dismiss this film just because it makes you uncomfortable, how is that any different from dismissing a character like Arthur Fleck? If we're going to make progress as a society, we need to step out of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And I think that's the central message of this film.
I definitely agree with that. Movies like this have their place within the broader culture. You take a movie that like Elephant, which was about the Columbine shootings. The movie is no fun to watch, just like this was. I didn't enjoy it.
No.
But it's important to see because in a way it brings that dark reality closer to home and makes you confront it in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise if you didn't see the movie.
If the other characters in this film would have shown compassion and civility toward Arthur, if they cared enough to see the warning signs from this one seemingly insignificant citizen of Gotham, the city could have saved itself from becoming a hell. The film is an extreme example of how highly populated cities like Gotham or New York, where so many people interact with each other, small interactions have rippling effects, and you never know how showing one person compassion, even if you feel like they're weird or different, can go farther than you realize toward healing society. A rising tide raises all ships.
Right.
Although I guess in the case of this film, when you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind.
Yeah. I think that when I first walked out of the theater, I thought that it didn't even really work as a cautionary tale because I was like, well, what's the lesson? Be nice to people? I'm nice to people. You know, This message is not for me. I don't get anything out of this. And I think that was actually part of the problem, my mindset.
Yeah.
Because actually, I am part of the problem. I've done things that were not nice to other people. That was the lesson that I learned the hard way this year. Like, my actions have hurt people, not physically, but, they've hurt people that I care about, people I consider friends and more. And in my head, I justified myself. But supposed justification doesn't save you from consequences.
Right.
Those 3 subway yuppies were horrible people. Robert De Niro's late night talk show host could be characterized as horrible. And Joker may have been occasionally sympathetic in this movie, but outside of self-defense or the defense of others, there's never really a reason to take someone's life. And, obviously, right? I don't need to tell you that. This movie is about a villain after all, but the movie's message is going to be construed in so many different ways. And what concerns me are the people who see this film and feel emboldened to carry out their own personal vendettas and give others, quote, what they deserve.
Right. Most people who see this film will probably be triggered into worrying about gun violence. And I don't want to dismiss that because if you think about it, the catalyst for this whole story is Arthur Fleck getting his hands on a gun.
Right.
But I do think this film makes a strong case for treating mental illness, which some argue is the underlying issue behind mass shootings. Now, I, like you, will admit that I am not the most compassionate of people. I learned this the hard way, during the drive home with my wife, Barbara, after we saw the movie for the first time. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't really like this film the first time I saw it because this film is a character study and because I couldn't relate to the character of Arthur Fleck with such a severe mental illness. I rejected the Arthur character pretty early on.
Yeah.
And because he's such a major part of the film, he's like in every scene. I found myself rejecting the film as a whole as I watched it. And I think it was a defense mechanism for how uncomfortable and shocking the film was. Mm-hmm. My wife, much more compassionate than me. I wouldn't say she liked the film, but she recognized its intelligence in a way that I didn't at first. I couldn't understand how she could sympathize with Arthur, but she made me realize that there's a difference between feeling pity for a victim and condoning their bad decisions.
Yeah, sympathy versus condoning.
Yeah, exactly. The film is intelligent in that as much as you disagree with everyone's bad decisions, you understand why the character is making them, even with Arthur.
Yeah, Arthur felt really real in this movie. The whole movie felt especially real, even more so than like grounded superhero films like The Dark Knight, which we've always said, oh, this feels real. This could take place in reality.
Right?
No, it couldn't.
Just when you thought it couldn't get any more real, it totally does.
Yeah, but I think that this film does highlight why vigilantism doesn't work in the real world, because determining who deserves justice and how it should be carried out is incredibly subjective. And it's why comic books need supervillains. It's why they never delve into the likely tragic histories of petty criminals. I won't say comics need to stick to those fantasy tropes. I mean, comics are just a medium after all, but I will say that in the Marvel and DC world of superhero fantasy action, those tropes have their place. We don't necessarily want to know that Batman's beating up a poor person, And
that poor person is like a victim of child abuse.
Right.
And, suffering from a mental illness that they have to receive medication for, and they're doing this to get the money for that medication.
Right. Yeah, and it's likely the case that that's happening,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, that's why you need supervillains. The irony is that in this movie, the Joker becomes far worse than the people he hated. He wants to give others what they deserve, but chose not to pull the trigger on himself for his crimes. It's hypocrisy. And at the very end, his message did seem political. He wanted to see society destroyed. Perhaps to rebuild a better one, which is a solution to society's ills, but much more destructive than simply working to heal society, which is something that Arthur could have done. But of course, he was too damaged to do so. It's weird that, I've always thought Bruce Wayne could do more with his billions of dollars to help fix Gotham than he ever could as Batman just beating up poor people.
Well, he's a philanthropist in the comics.
Yeah, but you never really see the results of that in the comics.
That's true. That's very true.
Although, Arthur in this movie did work as a clown and did try to bring happiness and laughter to other people, like the kids in the children's hospital and stuff. So he was kind of doing his part.
And you could see how much he wanted that. You could see how much Joaquin Phoenix wanted to bring joy to the world in his performance. I can't believe we made it this far into the review and we haven't mentioned Joaquin Phoenix's performance. It was a tour de force greater than, dare I say, Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker in The Dark Knight. And that's not a knock on Heath Ledger. I actually like his version of the Joker more than Phoenix's. And I think Ledger was more unrecognizable as an actor in that role, which I think is a huge compliment.
Yeah.
But Phoenix had the benefit of more screen time, and his performance was so raw. It didn't feel like a performance at all. It wasn't hammy or manufactured. It was just sad and disturbing and real.
Yeah, I was really relieved that these two performances were nothing alike.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix really made this his own thing.
For sure.
I think the initial concern was that these characters would be very much alike, and I think that's why a lot of people that leave this film not liking it probably went in expecting something a lot more like Heath Ledger's Joker.
The characters look alike.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you replace panda mascara eyes for blue triangles isn't enough of a difference.
Right. They should have cut his hair or something.
Yeah, they should have. Phoenix played Arthur Fleck very timid and painfully awkward. His uncontrollable laugh looked like it was physically painful.
Oh, I hope they didn't do too many takes with that because,
I know.
Yeah, it looked like he was actually choking on his laugh.
Each one of those scenes where that happened, like when he's first talking to a psychiatrist or when he was on stage trying to get those jokes out.
Yes.
It was so hard to watch.
Yeah. The bus scene as well. That was hard.
Yeah. He started the film just invisible to society. Just this poor, starving guy with delusions of bringing joy to the world. Do you remember in our Joker versus Green Goblin episode, I mentioned how great of a foil the Joker is to Batman, and that Batman adopted this demonic, dark horned, winged facade to bring about good, and the Joker presents himself as a fun, colorful, joyful clown figure to enact evil and bring about chaos.
Yeah, that's great.
This film is like Joker Begins, and we get to see early on how the clown aspect was sincerely intended to bring joy initially.
Yeah.
But bad things kept happening to Arthur, and no one cared.
Yeah.
He gets jumped, he gets fired, he gets jumped again, he loses his psychiatrist and access to medication. His believed father punches him in the face, and his mom suffers a stroke. It's more than anyone could possibly be expected to bear. He was powerless in life until he shot those yuppies on the train. And you could see right after that, once he escaped to that public restroom, that he had never before felt that kind of power. It was intoxicating.
That was haunting. That whole scene. I appreciated it so much more the second time I saw it. Phoenix's performance and the music that he's flowing to, it's meditative.
It's almost like Tai Chi or something like that. His like improvised Tai Chi. It was mesmerizing. Again, he was just drunk on that power. And I think that's why he admitted that he didn't feel bad about the killing and why he kept doing it. And that's scary as shit.
It really is. And that's a testament to Joaquin Phoenix's acting ability. I really hope he gets a nomination. I don't know if he'll win. I hope he wins, but he definitely deserves at least an Oscar nomination for this role.
I would be flabbergasted if he did not get nominated. He's going to get nominated.
Yeah.
Let's be real. He's going to get nominated.
Well, I mean, Aquaman didn't get nominated for Best Visual Effects.
Yeah, that's totally bullshit. That. Yeah.
Not everybody gets what they deserve.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes with Arthur was him daydreaming about being on Murray Franklin's show. You know, Murray didn't have a large role, but it was important.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro's performance was pretty par for the course. I think it was cast as an homage to his work in Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, two Martin Scorsese films that have been touted as an inspiration for this film. And it's pretty evident that it was. That
yeah.
They were.
He kind of made for not the most exciting talk show host, though, I think. I'd be tuning into a different show, I think. He seemed just a little bit tired, I think.
Yeah. Arthur's daydream scene did such a good job of not only showing how awkward Arthur was, but of how much he idolized and loved Murray and everything he represented. Like, he was a father figure to him almost.
Yeah, it also set up the fact that we shouldn't necessarily trust everything that we see in the film.
Oh, absolutely. Arthur is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Which, you know, comes into play later on in the film. You know, but that scene, it made it so much more heartbreaking when Murray teases Arthur on television, and it makes the case for why Arthur would see the world as a hypocritical joke. Thomas Wayne was a hypocrite too. He was played by Brett Cullen in a role that originally belonged to Alec Baldwin before he was recast. Thomas Wayne was shown on television saying how Wayne Enterprises employees were like family, yet he ignored the well-being of his former employee Penny, Arthur's mom, and he dropped the adoption bomb on Arthur without any empathy.
Right. No, yeah, he had a severe lack of empathy in this movie, including when he described anybody who didn't make something of themselves in society was a clown. It's hard to make something of yourself in life, you know? It's not an easy thing to do. Not everybody can do it. And not just because they don't have the ability to, but because of external factors.
Right.
You know? And who knows what, you know, making something of yourself even really means.
Being a billionaire.
I guess so.
Or, like, co-hosting a badass podcast. That's what I think it means, personally.
Is this a badass podcast?
I think so.
Yeah, well, that's subjective, my friend. I like the ambiguity that came with the character of Thomas Wayne and whether or not he was even more of an asshole than the movie portrayed him out to be. In that he was rich and influential enough to fake adoption papers for Arthur's mom and have her institutionalized and all this other shit.
Yeah, that's what Penny said. But again, yeah, you're right. She's institutionalized. Who's going to believe her?
Right. Where do you fall on that debate? Do you think that Thomas is Arthur's father?
I don't think so.
No?
I like to think of Thomas Wayne as a good man. He came across as, you know, pretty harsh in this film, but I still think he needs to be that sort of like moral foundation for Bruce and for Gotham, you know, in a way.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
But speaking of Penny, like, Penny Fleck wasn't any better than the rest of them. Like, at one point, it kind of seemed like she adopted Arthur maybe just to try and legitimize an affair she had with Thomas Wayne. Mm-hmm. If that was the case and it didn't work, she was complicit in the physical trauma and abuse Arthur received as a child by her boyfriend.
Yeah, that's so horrible.
Fucking horrible. Horrible people. And yet, Arthur bathed her and fed her while he starved.
God damn, this movie's sad.
It is. And it's so real because, you know, people really live like this. Like, there are these heartbreaking stories out there. Everyone has one, it seems like. Mm-hmm. And it's all just heartbreaking.
Don't give up. That's the message that we should take away from this. Not, you know, give people what they deserve. It should be don't give up.
Yeah, exactly. Choose love, like Wonder Woman, you know?
Yeah.
I choose love. The one good person in the film, I think, besides Gary the little person clown, was Sophie Dumond, who was Arthur's neighbor, played by Zazie Beetz.
It was such a small role. It was smaller than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, me too.
I thought this was going to be like a whole arc. Not only was his love life not really an arc in this, it turned out to all be bullshit anyway.
Right. Ugh.
But I saw that coming. Did you see that coming?
I totally saw that coming.
Yeah. It was like the language of the film, I think. That first moment when she shows up at his door and she's like, "Did you follow me?" And his reaction where he's like, Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm calling bullshit on that. I don't think Arthur was the type of person who would have said that. And then like her response before she left was, you're so funny. It seemed like a fantasy scenario.
It totally did. And they kind of also really gave it away in that the scene where he like stormed into her apartment and kissed her.
Yeah.
They established the fact that he had been in her apartment before, yet right before he ambiguously kills her, he's exploring her apartment as if he's never seen it before.
Yeah. Do you think that he killed her? It's kind of a Schrodinger's cat situation, you know? You know that thought experiment where you put the cat in the box with a cyanide capsule that has a 50-50 chance of breaking? You close the box, and speaking in terms of like quantum physics, the cat is neither alive nor dead. It exists in like this quantum state until you open the box, and that version of reality kicks in at that moment.
Right. I would like to think he let her live. I'm an optimist. Because he let Gary the clown live.
Yeah.
It's not like Sophie did anything to him.
Yeah.
He is still, at his heart, sort of, in this film, a good person. Or at least he's bad to people who treat him badly.
Uh-huh.
I don't think Sophie did that. But
he killed the psychiatrist at the very end of the movie, who seemed to be treating him well.
But that was when he was, like, in full Joker mode.
Okay. We also did see sirens in the following shot coming to his building.
Yeah, and he was laughing uncomfortably.
I don't know if she lived or died. I just say that she's in a quantum state. She's neither alive nor dead until they decide to release that scene.
Yeah. I'll take it, because I don't want her to be dead. I do think she was a good person, probably the only good person in the film. The only mistake she made was performing an insensitive, yet seemingly innocent gesture of blowing her brains out.
Yeah.
Arthur felt she was a kindred spirit, became obsessed with her, stalked her, and eventually, again, ambiguously, maybe didn't kill her. So fucking heartbreaking, and yet, again, something I saw coming a mile away. I feel really jealous for the people who didn't see that. Like, how devastating would that scene have been?
It would have been
that
like
reveal.
Watching The Sixth Sense all over again.
I know, right? Exactly. That reveal was a little ham-handed.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think the movie did a little bit clumsily, as well made as the movie was. I think all you needed for that scene, for that reveal, was to hear her say, "Your name's Arthur, right? You live down the hall." And in that moment, you would know that everything else where she was around was just not true.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a smart film. It doesn't need to hold the audience's hand like that necessarily.
Exactly. We mentioned earlier that the catalyst for this whole kind of story that happens in this film is when Arthur gets a gun. And man, that gun brought so much tension every time it was on screen. Like from the moment he first has it out and it starts dancing with it, and he's like saying...
That was a funny scene, though.
It was a funny scene. It was also horrifying.
Yeah, there's a lot of the jokes in this where... What do you think was the funniest moment of this film?
There weren't a lot, but the ones that were there, I think, did get a laugh from the audience. I think the funniest joke was when he was like, "Oh, I forgot to punch out." Then he just like punches the clock box.
Yeah.
At, the clown shop.
That was funny. He also ran into the glass door at the hospital.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. I actually think that the funniest joke of this whole movie was probably the darkest. And it was right when he got done killing his clown buddy that gave him the gun. And the little person was stepping over the body to get to the door. And Arthur joked around with him, trying to scare him.
Oh, man.
That was so uncomfortable, but got so much nervous laughter.
It was the most uncomfortable scene in the entire film. I hated that scene the first time I saw it.
Well, it was kind of like a horror movie. Because
Yeah.
then you see that the little guy can't reach the lock, so you assume that he's going to die too.
Both times I saw the film, the audience was laughing during that scene. And, I kind of worked myself up to laughing the second time I saw it. The first time, I was like, "What's wrong with you people? This guy's about to die."
You didn't laugh at him scaring him?
No, That was scary. I was legit scared because he looked really scary in that scene.
Yeah, with the
just
blood splatter.
His white face and the blood splatter, the bright red blood splatter on the wall.
Yeah.
And the splatter on his face.
Yeah.
It was a horror scene.
Yeah. Funny, at least in retrospect.
Yeah. Once you get past the shock of it and you could kind of appreciate it a little bit more, it was funny. And kudos to Todd Phillips for being able to pull that off.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've ever been so, I guess humored is the right word, and horrified at the same time. So many emotions.
Yeah.
Another scene with the gun that got me was when he was dancing in the hospital with the children. And
that was funny.
The gun fell out. Now, you say funny. I have 2 daughters. To me, that was a really horrifying scene. It's like, oh my gosh, that just happened. Oh my gosh.
I felt more bad for him. I didn't think that anybody was necessarily in danger at that moment.
I would not be so sure. He shot a bullet through his wall in the scene previous.
That's true.
In the scene prior to that.
Yeah, he was just really careless with it.
Yeah. And of course, he got fired, right after that. And that was a powerful scene. Him smashing his head into the phone booth. That led to the killing of the yuppies on the train.
Yeah.
Those yuppies, those guys were assholes.
Yeah, throwing french fries at people, stealing bags. It's just messed up. I'm not going to say that they deserve to die.
I don't think anyone that Arthur killed deserved to die. But they can be called out as assholes.
But they can get kicked in the dick.
Yes, exactly. That would have been great.
I thought it was especially cold-blooded when Arthur chased down the yuppie that was trying to escape up the stairs. He could have just left it as him shooting him in the leg, but he didn't.
No. And he unloaded on him in the back until he was out of bullets.
Right.
Like, he was just so full of wrath in that moment.
I think it was necessary to make him unsympathetic, though, because he did kind of act in self-defense. So from some perspective, you could say that it was justified, but he needed to cross that line so that it was no longer justified.
Let's talk about a stand-up act. Initially, from the trailer, I thought he was just playing to an empty crowd and just playing to Zazie Beetz.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case, which just made it all the more horrific.
Yeah. I wonder if the crowd actually laughed at his jokes, though, at some point, because the music kind of swelled at that point and you couldn't understand what he was saying and you couldn't hear if the audience was laughing or not.
When he was laughing, you could hear snippets of people laughing. And I'm not sure if it's just because laughter is infectious or if they were sort of like laughing at him. In either case, he definitely walked away happy.
Yeah, he felt good about himself. He came home on a high. He came home and started dancing with his mom.
Right.
And of course, that was all shot down at the reveal that he may be Thomas Wayne's son.
It's a really interesting angle for the Joker, and it's a great way to connect him to Bruce Wayne, who we see, not too long after in his clubhouse sliding down the pole, in a nice homage to the Bat pole.
Yeah, from the 60s Batman television show.
Yeah, going into the Batcave.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That was a cool scene. I actually really liked that scene. When he's doing magic for the young Bruce Wayne. There was some interesting magic. He definitely did cross the line when he put his fingers in his mouth, though. That was kind of gross. And I understand why Alfred reacted the way he did.
Yeah, Alfred was interesting. I never quite pictured him looking like that.
When Arthur gets rejected by Alfred and, later on he goes to confront Thomas Wayne himself at that hall where they're watching the Charlie Chaplin Modern Times.
Yeah, that was such a stark contrast between the people sitting in that theater and the people protesting outside.
Yeah, for sure.
The disparity is just incredible, and it's very true to the real world, where we hear more and more how the top 10% most wealthy people in America own like 90% of the wealth.
Well, that's pretty close to like the 80-20 rule. That's kind of universal. I think it'll always kind of be that way.
But they could be using their money to such a better purpose than, going to see Charlie Chaplin, especially when, you're calling them clowns and these people are rioting outside. I feel like with all the governmental and societal problems that Gotham has, to have a bunch of fat cats sitting in the theater laughing at Charlie Chaplin, a guy who plays the character called the Tramp, who is, an impoverished character, it was pretty decent commentary on where Todd Phillips fell on the whole Occupy Wall Street movement that was around a few years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of societal commentary in this film. Arthur learns in that bathroom scene with Thomas Wayne that his mom was an inmate at Arkham Asylum, or I guess Arkham State Hospital.
Yeah, they should have kept it Asylum.
They should have.
But he goes over there and he visits the hospital and he gets the file on his mother, which was just a tragic scene, especially with him laughing, laughing but also crying at what he's reading about how his mother treated him when he was a kid, about why he has this condition.
Yeah, it's a physically inflicted condition. And that just makes the character all the much more sympathetic. Of course, in the scene soon after, he kills his mom.
Yeah, but that's like important to, again, take away the sympathy of the character. Much like the subway scene, when you feel sorry for him, he immediately has to almost cross that line.
I love how he mentioned how much he hated the Fleck name and how much he's always hated that.
Yeah.
And I think that was sort of one of the reasons why he wanted to be introduced as Joker, because he didn't want to be associated with his previous name.
It adds a little bit of mystery as to the true identity of the Joker by making him adopted in this movie, if he is indeed adopted, which feels comic book accurate, which was nice.
The scene after that, where he's practicing his guest spot,
Oh, man.
That was one of the hardest scenes to watch for me, I think.
They're just so cavalier with the concept of suicide.
It was disturbing. And I just couldn't imagine how horrifying that would be to actually see something like that on television through a knock-knock joke.
I mean, the audience still saw someone get shot, and that was a brutal scene.
That scene was probably the most iconic moment of this film. His whole speech at the end with Murray, just calling him out for being a hypocrite, calling out society for being apathetic, calling out society for dictating the rules and mores and even what humor is. It was powerful stuff.
I thought the line where he said, "Who cares if these guys died? If I died, you would just walk over me on the street." I thought that was extremely powerful because it's true. You know, it goes back to what the Joker said in The Dark Knight. There are certain people that society just expects to die. You know, gangbangers, soldiers, that they don't feel as much for, you know?
Yeah. And he was kind of pointing out that people saw those yuppie character guys, even though they were assholes, as more valuable. Their lives were more valuable than his own.
Right.
And that's not right because all life is valuable.
But then he takes a life. So that exposes the hypocrisy in his own philosophy. I thought Phoenix's performance was particularly angry at that point, and it was like a real type of anger too, where he's like jacked up on adrenaline because after he shoots Murray, you know, he's doing like the leg shaking thing, you know, and he's kind of experiencing the rush of it, and I think that's why he shoots him again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, during that whole speech towards the end, you could see like the anger and the hatred building up in him. It almost looks like in some moments Arthur is going to start crying because he's just so angry at the audience who's booing him. They're not understanding what he's trying to say, you know, and he's just calling them out as horrible people. It was a really powerful performance.
I think it's the moment that will really haunt people for days after they see this movie. It certainly haunted me.
Yeah. I love the way they ended the scene too, you know, where he goes up to the camera and he's like, and don't forget, that's life. And it, you know, it cuts him off before he finishes, but we just see all these screens and we see news footage reacting to what he has done. And we see it played over and over again. Yeah. And it's just so like, it's a weird way to process like what just happened.
Yeah. I almost feel like the movie should have cut from there to Arkham Asylum at the end movie, because the whole scene where he's going through Gotham, and of course, you know, this whole scene was necessary because it set up the death of the Waynes. But I feel like this whole scene where he's rescued and then like he's praised by this mob of people, I think that's where the movie made a mistake, because anybody who identified with that society in this film now feels like they should be praising the Joker. I don't think the Joker is someone to be lionized or to be idolized or anything like that. So I think it really sent the wrong message.
But I also understand why those people in the film, those characters in the film, would idolize him, because he called out society for its lack of compassion, which is what they feel they're lacking.
Yeah, it makes sense for the context of the movie for those people, but I don't think that the film should have showed it because it really portrayed the Joker as a heroic figure.
Yeah.
I guess I don't get what the point of showing that was. And I think this is the scene where it actually finds a lot of its detractors.
I think at the very least, it wanted to show that people idolized him enough to copy him so that there were copycats that resulted in the death of the Waynes.
So yeah, maybe show that scene, but skip the part where he's standing up on the car getting praised by everybody, because it just feels like a miscommunication.
I could see that, but I also thought that him like smearing the blood across his face,
I mean, it was creepy.
Was pretty powerful.
I wouldn't say it was powerful. I would say it was creepy.
It was powerfully creepy. There were audible gasps in the audience when they realized that all of this chaos was leading to the Wayne's death. What a great way to do that. You know, it's kind of interesting how in films like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, the Joker was sort of a response to Batman. You know, he was the escalation.
Yeah.
In this version, Batman is a response to the chaos wrought by the Joker.
Now, the Joker seems to be kind of thinking about that response in the last scene of this movie when he's in Arkham Asylum, thinking about this joke that he doesn't tell the psychiatrist because she won't understand it.
Yeah, he thinks it's funny that Bruce Wayne's parents died.
You think he was laughing at that specifically?
Yeah.
I interpreted it as maybe he was laughing at the concept of somebody rising up to challenge him.
I don't think he has that kind of foresight.
No, that's true. He didn't seem particularly intelligent in this movie. Like, he wasn't like a smart Joker.
He wasn't like a criminal mastermind Joker,
right,
like Heath Ledger.
Although his identity kind of changed at the end of this movie, so there's no telling where it could go. He's lost all of his ties to his previous life. Judging by his entrance on the Murray show, he can totally transform himself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was a huge transformation.
And I think that was kind of symbolized as he was kind of like slowly dancing before he walked through the curtain. It was just so eerie. Like when he first started out, he was like really stiff and creaky. He almost looked like a body rising from the grave. And he slowly transformed into this Joker character.
Something much more smooth.
Yes.
It's almost like, yeah.
More confident.
Him stepping through the curtain was like a rebirth.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And of course, he has like a similar strut as he's walking down the hallway of Arkham Asylum in the last shot of this movie.
Yeah.
Which was horrifying.
I definitely did a double take there. I was like, wait. Ah, that's blood.
So did he like kick in the psychiatrist's body or something like that?
No, I think he would have had blood splatter on his pant legs if he did that. I think he stepped through a pool of her blood.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And that's the end of the film. The film is almost perfect. The pacing drags a bit, but it has great performances, great writing, great cinematography. But the movie is not for everyone. I, for one, hope my daughters never see it. I probably won't be buying it, honestly.
Wow.
For that reason. And because I can't recommend it to everyone, I can't give it 5 stars, as good as the film is. I'm settling closer to 4 stars.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, this movie is very much like Clockwork Orange and Taxi Driver and those type of movies that I don't like watching. I don't find any enjoyment out of watching them, but they do communicate a message that I think needs to be communicated. And so it has value in that. It has value in its artful presentation. So yeah, it could get 4.5 stars, but I knock it solely subjectively because of that enjoyment factor. I do like to enjoy the movies that I see. You know, I don't like walking out of them feeling like shit. But it's always something to be commended when a movie can make you think, you know, when it can actually draw a response out of you. And to that regard, I think this is actually an important movie, despite how unpleasant it is.
I think it's the most important film I've seen in quite a few years, honestly. Yeah, hopefully we'll see how well this film ages, you know.
I think it'll age well.
But I'm talking like decades from now. You know, society probably will have changed by that time. So will this film still be as relevant?
I don't think society will change all that much. You look at a film like Clockwork Orange that was made and condemned in the 1970s, you know, but it still feels relevant when you watch it today. Wow, that's a really pessimistic thought.
But yeah, that's very true. And on that note...
That's life.
That's life. We want to know what you guys think of the film. Let us know.
Yeah, I'm eager to hear your opinions. I know there are as many opinions out there as there are people that have seen the movie, you know, and at the end of the day, you don't have to agree with us. This is probably the most subjective comic book movie ever to come out in terms of how you feel about it.
I know, like, I feel like you can't even argue with anyone on their take of the film. It's just like, yep, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, which is why I'm especially keen on hearing what people have to say. So reach out to us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and you can find links to all of our social media profiles by visiting our website at dynamicduel.com. You can also email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com.
If you visit our website at dynamicduel.com, you'll also find a link to our merchandise store where you could find t-shirts and mugs and other merchandise with our no prize artwork on it, including the Joker. Although I think this week I'm drawing Creeper to tie into our last episode.
Next week, we'll have another duel episode, which is going to tie into the upcoming Wonder Woman Bloodlines animated film that DC is releasing. So it's going to be Troya, who is the sister of Wonder Woman, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Versus She-Hulk, who's the cousin of the Hulk.
And that all leads up to our 150th episode, where we're pitting Teen Titans against the X-Men.
Right, because Troy is a member of Titans.
Yeah.
So join us next week as we go into that and find out who would win. We want to remind you guys that we're trying to get to 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. So if you guys can rate this show on that platform, if you haven't yet already, please do so. And if you have, please share the show with your friends and family.
Yeah, don't forget to also subscribe to us on whatever platform you're listening on. That way you don't miss an episode.
Special thanks to executive producers John Spees and Bodo Winter.
And that does it for this episode. Up, and away.
True believers.